we're creating maybe something new in this world, but this isn't new in the history of people. And storytelling is a tool that has helped us evolve. And we, I think, need to embrace it back into mainstream. And yes, so many ancient cultures use storytelling as a deep tool. And I'm very, very inspired by the history of storytelling in general.
Hi, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, you get my conversations with peak performing thought leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We explore how you can innovate through creativity, compassion, and collaboration. I believe that innovation combined with compassion and creative thinking can save the world, and I aim to bring you ways you can do it too. If you're enjoying the show, I'd be super grateful if you can support it by buying me a cup of coffee. You can buy me a cuppa at buymeacoffee.com/IsoldeT. And now, let's get on with the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm super happy you're here, and I'm really excited about today's guest. You're going to love her. Chloe Drimal is the founder and CEO of Yoni Circle. Yoni Circle was founded by Chloe, and she is passionate about storytelling. She believes that telling one story heals you, and listening to others creates bridges between people who may have thought they had nothing in common. Chloe is a Yale University alum who started her career at Snapchat in 2013 as the 14th employee, where she was integral in the creation of the Our Story product. During her 4.5 years there, she grew and led a team of 80 employees that curated hundreds of unique and culturally relevant stories for the Snapchat community around the world. She also helped create the internal women's group for Snapchat, which quickly became her passion and led to her interest in creating Yoni Circle. This is so exciting. I'm so pleased to welcome you, Chloe. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is so amazing. We were just chatting about the fact that before we started recording, that I used to go to a lot of, back when we could do these kinds of group events, I used to go to a lot of live sort of women's gatherings, and I feel a little bit like Yoni Circle is the online version of that, and I'm just loving it. And where did you get the idea for Yoni Circle? What inspired you to begin it?
So many things inspired me, but I also will say that it's good that it feels like it came from in person, because it did. Before we actually created the app, I started just throwing these storytelling circles out of my apartment. And the idea came from a few things. One, so as you said, I was integral in the creation of the Our Story product for Snap. And the Our Story product for Snap was where we would set up a geofence. So we would geofence something like Coachella or a city or a more cultural event like New Year's Eve. And so if you were a Snapchatter in one of these geofence regions and you took a snap, you could then submit it to our Coachella story, our New Year's Eve story. So for something like New Year's Eve, we would have over 100,000 snaps submitted, and we would turn that into, it was a lot of content, but it was so cool. Like, we were just looking at such amazing, intimate moments of people around the world. And so we would curate that content into like a 5-minute narrative of a diverse, multi-perspective narrative of the experience. And so, that moment of building the Our Story product really helped me see firsthand how stories connect us, and also just see from all this content that I was viewing, how connected we are all as humans. And, a little before that, my background in college was creative writing and film. And I participated in a group in college that put diverse or eclectic group of people together that didn't really know each other. And the core of it was that we would, meet, get to know each other, and tell a bio, the story of our life and how we felt about that. And so that was like an important kind of stepping stone in Yoni Circle. And then I learned about another storytelling practice called counsel. So that was important to to this all coming together. And then I think the last piece that led to Yoni Circle is I built this Our Story product for about 2 years, and then I was taken off of it as lead, and I was kind of put on other creative projects. And you know, looking back on it, like, I had a great life, I still had a great job, all of that, but I felt really alone in the experience, and I did feel like a failure. And it was really hard for me. And I think especially in the community of friends that I had, it was a little bit of that, like, oh, you're gonna be fine, like, get over it, get over it.
Mm,
And it was actually intimate conversations with women that were older than me, that were further along in their career, where I think I'd call it luck. They told me stories of their past, like, without me really telling what I was going through exactly.
mm-hmm.
And when they told these stories, like, that's where I really, really understood the healing power of storytelling. Like, my whole life has set me up for the connective powers, but in their stories, I saw myself, and it was all of a sudden I was kind of like snapped out, and I was like, oh, I'm not alone in this narrative. This is actually pretty normal. And then their story, you know, because they were older than me, like, they had the next chapters, and their next chapters empowered me to write mine, which ended up being, you know, 2 years later, leaving Snap and embarking on the journey of creating Yoni Circle, and bringing this, you know, hopefully more approachable experience of these storytelling circles and the healing and the connective power of storytelling to the world.
Wow. Wow, there's so much in what you just said. I'm so grateful that you shared that. When you spoke with these women, it sounds like there was a real both lesson, a bunch of lessons learned, but also the opportunity to hear something that's very intimate. And I'm wondering when you started on this journey, how much of that were you thinking about, that this was going to be an opportunity for people to share from their deepest selves? Is that something that sort of working at Snap prepared you for, or has this been a learning process for you as you realize how much people do need to share?
Yeah, absolutely. A big part is vulnerability. And I would say I don't know if it was like my experience at Snap or experience of like my whole life uh, of trying to fit in a box, and trying to, um, you know, trying to figure out what this word success means to me.
Mm,
And, you know, especially at younger versions and different characters of myself, it was sort of trying to fit in. And I think that it was learning over time that exactly who I am is enough. And the more that I can really understand me and what makes sense to me, the easier that, the more comfortable it is to live and to just like be. And I think that the again, like, I had done these different storytelling circles, but these moments with strangers were just like so important. And being with strangers, or these women or members that eventually might become close acquaintances and then even friends, there's just like a power in letting go, and then opening up your, you know, your community, in the sense that you now have a better chance to connect with someone who really does have an identical story to you. You know, different characters, slightly different plot line, but the emotions that you feel is the same. And the more that we understand that we're not alone in these moments, the more that we can get back into just like really sinking into our heart and finding our unique and truest form of self.
I just keep soaking in what you're saying. I love it so much. This
Yay.
idea of finding your innermost self. The thing that strikes me about what you just said is that in many ways, yes, we are unique, but when you get down to that heart center, it sounds to me like what Yoni Circle is trying to do, and perhaps even already doing, is tapping into those places where we are all connected. How much purpose? I
Absolutely.
love the snaps. That's great.
Yeah.
how much conscious thought did you put into that piece of it, or is it that it's serendipity and we're finding that it actually works that way?
A lot of conscious thought and a lot of conscious thought to create this safe space that hopefully allows us to find that deeper connection that we all have.
Mm,
But I would say it was like serendipity and really the course of my life that you know allowed me to see that we were all connected. And like I said, the Our Story product, seeing back in college the storytelling community that I was in, and then these conversations with women, they helped me find that connection. And then the more that I do Yoni Circle, the more that and I've I probably did 100 in person, and I'm almost at like 200 in the app. And every time, the thesis is just strengthened. It's like, yeah, like I'm not crazy. I really believe that we can live in a world where these types of storytelling circles can be, a major way that we, a part of our self-care ritual, and a major way that we feel better simply by the understanding that we are all connected, that we are like the human experience is shared. And I think the more that we understand that, the easier the day to day, the normal ups and downs will be.
for sure. And it's interesting when you were talking about how yes, we really can do these things. We really can connect. We really can be part of these communities. It reminds me of stories that I've heard about how in ancient times, perhaps prehistorical, but even things, a few hundred years ago, a few thousand years ago, there would be these sort of wise women of the villages who were responsible for telling the stories. Like in New Mexico, they have these figurines of the storyteller, usually a woman, who would teach the children of the village the story of the people, and that was in many ways her job. So it seems like you're sort of continuing a long history, if you will, of these things happening. But we're like you and I were just talking about before we started that everybody's really busy. Despite the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, we're all still really busy. So why do you think women join Yoni Circle, and what do you think keeps them coming back?
Absolutely. And I'll just touch on what you said because it really resonates with me is, we're creating maybe something new in this world, but this isn't new in the history of people.
Mm-hmm.
And storytelling is a tool that has helped us evolve, and I think, need to, embrace it back into mainstream. And yes, there, so many ancient cultures use storytelling as a deep tool, and I'm very, very inspired by the history of storytelling in general. And I think that why people join Yoni Circle is a lot of people don't know what they're getting into at all. They've not, they're like, for sure, they're just sort of like, I don't know. I think there's something at this point, being small and having a lot of work to do to continue to like educate and create branding.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something like in your intuition that I think I need this. I don't know what this is. And I think the people that join now, they're they're those that identify as women that they're curious, they're open-minded, they have a thirst to grow, to really figure out who they are and be their best version of self. They're definitely people that I think pre-pandemic, would have loved to like backpack or travel or, different things like that. And why they come back is the storytelling experience really helps you to feel less alone. How a storytelling experience works is they're capped at 6 women. They're an hour long. They're run by a host who we call a salonier. Saloniers start as community members, and then they apply and are trained by us to be a salonier. And the experience starts with 6-minute messaging chat where women get to know each other before we go into the video chat experience. And so it opens up with an intro round where members say their name, where they live, what they do for work, and or what they're passionate about, and then what's on their mind or in their heart. So this is kind of like the first wave of vulnerability is, an exercise that we do in the chat. This is really the second wave of vulnerability and starting to really connect you and create this safe space for you to connect to your own heart and your own past experiences. So then we go into the third round, which is the core of the circle experiences, which is the stories. So the Slanier will lead you through a really quick breathing exercise just to really get you out of your head and into your heart space. And then she'll give you a story prompt. The way the story prompts work is they start at a macro level and they move micro. So macro level would be like, today we're telling stories on risk or stories on letting go or stories on bravery. And then she'll the Slanier will help break down the prompt and give you a bunch of different examples of what, a story on bravery might look like to really help probe at your memories and help you find a story that you might not have thought of in a while. And so then it becomes a circle of stories. You can always pass the talking piece. We'll offer it back to you in the end, or it's perfectly fine to be an active listener during the story round. And then we end with a witness round where women share what they witness in circle. It could be a pattern they saw between the stories, a realization they had, or just a line that really resonated with them. The only rule that we have is that this is not a time for advice. And then we close out. And I think that what's happening is you feel really good after. And a part of why you feel good after and calmer is you're really reminded that, yes, the human experience is shared. Because when you're listening to these other members' stories, it's really hard not to see yourself in them. And then on top of that, you just got to release a story and be accepted for it and, be validated for it. And we validate through snaps because we don't comment on anything. You can only speak when you have the talking piece. And it really gives you a moment to let go. And kind of a little bit of like the science around what's happening is, so we store and digest memories in our hippocampus, which is an area of our brain. And specifically in women, an important part of like the healing or integration process of these memories is really just speaking the story out loud and being validated for it. And so if it's a more, traumatic story, this experience will allow you to kind of wipe your slate clean and move on. But maybe it's a story that, a past version of yourself was very brave or courageous or, moving from the heart. By telling that story out loud, it allows you to integrate that version of yourself into your present. And maybe you need to bring that bravery back into your life or that risk taking. So yeah. And then there's also, I think within the circles, like people broaden their perspectives, build empathy, and just find deeper levels of self-awareness.
It's funny because my next question was going to be, do you have rules of engagement? And if so, what are they? And I love that the only rule is you don't give advice. So
we do, there are some other rules as well. In the storytelling round, the rules are to listen and speak from the heart, only speak when you have the talking piece. If you resonate with what someone's saying, we do snaps, or we have an in-app snap icon. Take the stories with you, leave the names behind. We take confidentiality seriously. And then lastly is to speak succinctly.
And the person, the word I can't pronounce, could you say it again?
Slanier.
Okay. So
there's a lot of people that want us to change that term. But I will say the Slanier, why we're so inspired by that word is it comes from the salons that happened in Paris during the 16th century. And the salons were all run by women called salonières, and they were co-ed experiences of talking about literature and politics and science at the time. But at that time, women could not publish their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was like, these salons were the first time that women really had a voice in society. And so it's a very kind of inspiring moment of feminism for us.
I love it. It's I used to host salons in my house back when I lived in DC, and it's
Oh,
amazing. The people would bring art and all of that to the salons, and we would talk about all of this. What role does art play? Do women ever talk about stories that are more creative, or is it pretty much always personal stories that they share?
it's always personal stories, I'd say. Yeah, and that's very part, like, it's not fiction stories, it's your own personal stories. That said, our community definitely is quite creative. We do open mics once a month, and we get to see how creative our community is, and that's absolutely beautiful. And I think that a lot of creatives really connect to the circle experience because it's inspiring. It's getting you out of your bubble, and when you get out of your bubble, you can create in different ways.
If I weren't already a member, I'd be like, how do I join? But for other people, how do you join Yoni Circle? If you are a woman and you want to tell your story and you want to listen to other women's stories and connect in that way, what's the process of joining?
Yeah, so we're iOS only right now, but you can download the app and then you apply to be a member. And what we care most about in that application process is the question of why join, and really looking for people that are ready to be a part of this community and to be open-minded and understand that our differences are what make us magical.
So I guess go search on Yoni Circle in the App Store. Is that the next
Yeah,
thing?
that's
Okay.
that's perfect. Sorry, yeah.
No,
Search
no,
on,
that's okay.
yeah, search on Yoni. We also have a, Instagram. You can follow us. We're Yoni_circle. And then our website's www.yonicircle.com.
Cool. We were gonna get to that later in our chat, but I was like,
Okay, perfect.
let me just make sure that that's what's going on. So the population of women who are in Yoni Circle, can you talk a little bit about the I know it's inclusive, which I think is great. Can you talk a little bit about the sort of the breakdown of the population? Who are the women who have joined Yoni Circle? Do they come from different walks of life, different socioeconomic statuses, different places, countries? What conversations are being had, and who's listening to them?
Absolutely. So we're across over 1,000 cities and 80 countries worldwide. So
Wow.
it's very global. It's very all walks of life, all different socioeconomic statuses, and that's really important for us. Like, we are free right now, but we will be monetizing soon. And I think, and our community has been a very big part of the monetization process, the strategy. We have luckily thousands of people responding to our surveys to make sure that we get this next chapter right, and we continue to be able to grow as a business and sustain ourselves and keep building bigger and better things, while still making sure that we're really accessible, that we really are creating a community that supports one another.
I'm taking it all in. I keep pausing because I'm like, oh, this is so fabulous. Uh, can you talk a little bit about feedback you've gotten about the benefits of not only being able to listen to other women's stories, but sharing yourself? What do the members of Yoni Circle say, if you know anything, about like long term, not just short term, you feel good, but what are some of the long term trends that you're noticing about women who are participating and how their stories and their lives have changed because of Yoni Circle?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have some very nice emails that we receive and reviews that we get. Um, And I think at the basis of them, like, again, it's like I talked about how after circle you feel calmer, but that is a long term effect, because you start to really get into this idea that the human experience is shared. So the downs in your life start to feel less dramatic, I would say,
Mm.
and start to feel less of like, oh my God, and just sort of, okay, this is a moment. Another thing that we, see as a long lasting effect is the idea of active listening, and really starting to integrate that into your life. So as I said, that's a major rule of the circle experience, is the active listening. um, and and yeah, sitting back and realizing that you don't always have to speak back to the person, and you can just, I mean, you're a great active listener naturally, clearly. But you can just kind of soak it in and then take a moment to respond. We see that a very um, big thing that's happening. I even have some reviews pulled up. Should I like read one of them?
Absolutely. That'd be great.
So this is from a woman in South Africa, and she says, Yoni Circle was a life raft. It connected me to myself, an incredibly inspiring woman at a time when I needed it most. I would never have imagined that telling stories and reconciling with my own weird life could be so healing. I am in awe of the women I meet at Yoni Circle and grateful to them for creating a magical space where I feel like I belong, less alone, and more empowered to accept my authentic self.
That's amazing. Incredible. Wow. I love it. But it brings up a point for me that I would love it if you would address, and that is, and I don't know how to even talk about it because it's challenging. Some of the stories I would imagine, particularly the tough ones, might be triggering for some of the other women in listening in the circle. Like it's a circle of 6 women, and if one is talking about something that is traumatic
Mm-hmm.
and it triggers someone else, what is the process of dealing with that, and how? Like, I imagine the salonier is not necessarily a trained psychologist, but rather more of a facilitator. So what are the steps that Yoni Circle takes if something like that happens? And if it has happened, what did you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so a few things. So I think this is an area that will continue to develop and scale. I'll say that first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's important is, I'm leaving out a few parts of the script of the experience. And one of them is that, as you tell your stories, make sure to be self-aware in your storytelling process.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's two type of triggering. There's like a triggering because, a story is being brought up that like really relates to something of your past that you don't want to remember. And then there's a triggering where there's like a story where it's putting down a certain type of group of people. I think that our script and luckily our community really stays away from, potentially triggering because of the way that you tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of bringing up so that's something else that we say as you go into stories of kind of like, hey, if you're triggered by the story, please feel free to pass the talking piece, take a moment. And then the Slanier kind of says afterwards, like, please reach out to me. And so that experience right now, so it really, it hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
We've had like one maybe situation where it was like a kind of happened kind of thing that we
Mm-hmm.
definitely are learning from. Um, and we really just at this point hold space for that individual. And luckily, so far it's been pretty core community members that have allowed for conversations of what do we do with this at scale, and actually, we're able to create a very vulnerable conversation so we could learn from this experience and think about next steps, for when this happens, which will, down the line probably, giving us having a little bit more internal tools to give to a woman that is triggered, to support her, like definitely like outside of the salonier, and in terms of a more therapist like situation, or at the very least helping like guide her towards, what to do next from, what was brought up with her. So we're definitely working on that. It hasn't happened really yet at all, but it's something that we're definitely thinking about.
Yeah, that's great because in listening to you, I love this idea of safe space where you can talk about some of these potentially traumatic stories, and also just be let your hair down, if you will, and be vulnerable. Uh, Within that vulnerability, I would imagine women find strength in themselves, and I'm wondering, with like that group chat, can you talk a little bit about after the Yoni circle, what is the process? You go through, the circle is closed out with the witness round like you were talking about, and then there's a group chat after that where women can connect further. What happens in those group chats, and how do they allow these women to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So after circle, you're put into like a kind of, it's the same people group chat, but it's a fresh thread
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning. And so, and then you can connect with those stories that you can stay connected with this group, or you can connect with the people that you really connected to. Um, so we do have some like privacy options though.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be a private profile or a public profile.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a public profile, that means that, when people are, there's something called a pre-screen of the storytelling circle. So I see a storytelling circle at a time, and I'm interested in what the Salonier like, I can press on that circle, see who's in it, learn a little bit more about the Salonier. So if you're a public profile, your face will show up on that screen and your name. If
Mm-hmm.
you're private, your face does not show up and your name does not show up either. Also, if you're private, people can't chat you after circle.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the friend graph works on Yoni Circle is that you're only connected to either women that you've been in circle with, or that are coming in through your phone contacts. But again, those women have to have a public profile for you to be able to message them. I think that as we, keep developing the product, we'll have a way that you can still message them, but they don't have to accept it. They're not, officially a friend yet, because I think something that we have these, there's different people on our platform. There's some that really want to connect, and really foster friendships, and there's some that, depending on who they are, maybe they want to like really keep their privacy yet have these like very vulnerable interactions. And so we want to make sure it feels very safe for both types of people.
Safety is so important. I It makes me think, believe it or not, of Take Back the Night marches. I don't know if you've ever participated in one. You're a lot younger than I am, but they were marches to sort of stand up to sexism and the rape culture. And one of the things that felt great about participating was, I remember, this is back in Ann Arbor where I went to school. We were marching, and it was a lot of women. We were marching, and we were calling for people to join us from the open windows of the dorms as we walked down the streets, and women were pouring out to join the march. They weren't planning on it, but they were pouring out to join the march. And I'm wondering if there is that same, like, when women find out that there's a safe space for them to tell their stories, what is the emotional impact on you as you see so many women wanting to be part of this?
That's a great question. Very personal question that I'll decide to be vulnerable with. It feels so good, in some ways, to know that like I created this in so many ways because like I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believed from what I knew that if I needed it, other people did too. Um, so it is this like beautiful journey of, we have a small community, but mighty community now that I know that this thing that, I started creating and now I have a team really supporting me to create is really helping people and helping people in a way that feels fun, that's not sterile, that is unique and quirky and pushes you to be yourself and all of that. And that feels so good. And then, of course, there's like a pressure. There's a pressure when you see something that's working, that people are deeply connecting to, and then you have I am a VC backed company, and there's like a pressure to figure out how to scale it and scale
Mm,
it right.
mm,
And for me, that's scaling it in a way that hopefully can be a little bit more socialistic and more community driven, while still being able to create a business that can sustain. So there's like that complete mix of, oh my God, like, wow, like, because when I first fundraised for this, like, people thought they literally looked at me like I had 5 heads and I was insane, and they were like, this is never going to work. And then we launched the app in April of 2020, and it's really grown to a good size base with a very, very retained base, and very active base. And so I'm not being looked at crazy. And the next step is really, okay, how can we make this a long-term thing? How can we really, mainstream this world of storytelling circles, this world where, like, we're all really supporting each other to be our most authentic selves. And I don't know if that's like fully been done at scale. And so I think some of that creates pressure and anxiety, because I just care so much. I care so much about creating a really inclusive culture and something that's hopefully very good for the world. So that's kind of where I'm at now. It's like this, like, wow, this is so great that people are feeling so good from this and making friendships and feel less anxious and just feel good every time they leave Circle. And I get the sweetest messages from people all over the world that make me feel so good. And now I don't want to fail them. I want to keep building for them.
It sounds to me, honestly, Chloe, like because of where you're coming from, your heart is in the right place. I don't think you can fail. I really don't. I mean, really,
Thank you.
this is, listening to your perspective, it just feels like it's, straight to the moon. Honestly, that what an amazing perspective. I love that you shared that. Thank you. I have just a few more questions. I could talk to you about this for the next 6 hours, but I realize that you have a life to get back to. So you've done something new. There's a new innovation, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the launch of Yoni Radio. How do you
Mhm.
envision that evolving? First of all, what is it, and how do you envision that growing?
Yeah, I love Yoni Radio. And we have a lot of work to do on it. So we launched with the storytelling circles in April, and then in of 2020, and then in October of 2020, we made it so you could start recording the stories that you told within Circle, and that recording could live private on your profile. We do not have access to it, or public. And that allows, like, people that you do Circle with, they could go on your profile and listen to your past stories. And we built tools so that we had easier access to everyone's public stories.
Mm,
And so in December of 2020, we launched the beginnings of Yoni Radio Broadcast. And so with Yoni Radio Broadcast, we're starting to curate these stories and bring them, on the home page so people can listen to them. So we first started with a broadcast experience where it was actually me curating 4 to 5 stories, and then kind of doing a little bit quick meditation between each story to really sit with the story and feel into what came up for you, and then ending with a witness round. And then now we've kind of moved into, we're just testing a lot. And also my days have gotten crazy, so I need to, you know, calm them down, and then I'll get
mhm.
back to making these broadcasts. As you know, they take a bit of time.
Sure.
And so now we're playing with like a story highlight. So we do a new story every other day. But what was great about this learning experience was when we launched, the time that it took a new member to try their first circle dropped from averaging 18 days to being 4. So we saw
Wow.
that it was just such an important part of the onboarding experience, and really like peeling back the layers of what type of stories are being told, what type of women are in these circles, and the community at large. But really for us, I think it's an exciting time to really, and we have a lot of work to do on it. And I'm excited to keep, designing all this stuff. But is really pushing the asynchronous side of our community. A lot of people don't have time to do an hour circle a week,
Mm,
especially when you have to really plan at least 2 days ahead, and maybe even 3 or 4 if you want to get like that time that you really want.
hmm
And so by building out this kind of library of these amazing, powerful, and connective stories, you can kind of get that little bit of the Yoni fix at any time of day that you want, and really not only connect to yourself, but connect to this community that you're a part of, and connect to these women. So there's a lot that we'll be building out in the asynchronous side of things, and within the stories that that we're curating on the platform.
That's amazing. And I love how different levels of the word commitment comes to mind, but it's not really the word that I'm looking for. But if you have time, you can do more. But if you don't, there's still a way to be part of the experience. And I'm so grateful that you're doing that, especially with, you would think that the pandemic would make us have more free
Yeah.
time, but it looks like no. Many of us have even less free time than we used to. So I'm so glad that Yoni Radio and Yoni Circle, the app, are going to be able to make room for that for women who may not be able to commit to the time, that a full circle would necessitate. I would love it if you, first of all, before we stop, Chloe, I'm so grateful that you've done this. What an empowering and amazing thing that you're doing for women all over the world who otherwise might feel like they don't have a voice. You're giving them a voice. So that is so incredible and
Thank
wonderful. Thank
you.
you. Uh,
Thank you so much for saying that.
no, it's really wonderful. I've participated in so many talking circles and listening circles live, and I know the pandemic has made a lot of us feel more isolated. So it's amazing to have something that is so accessible. If you've got an iPhone right now, you can join Yoni Circle. So that's incredible. I would love it if you would. I know you mentioned them earlier, but if somebody wants to get a hold of Yoni Circle, find out more about Yoni Circle, could you give the social media links and the website just again? I know I'm going to put it in the show notes, but I'd love it if you let everybody know.
Of course. So our Instagram's Yoni_circle. Our website's just yonicircle.com. And then in our, like in the, Apple store, you just type in Yoni Circle and you can find us. And if you are an Android user, just note that we, in the next like 6 to 8 months, will be building out our website so that we can actually accept members on our website and have circles on the web. And we'll also continue we do virtual events about 4 to 5, and those are growing each month. So you'll be able to do those as well.
Fabulous. And it's interesting in the world. I understand. I just recently saw this stat that Androids are used much more often than iPhones. And so the fact that you're going to be putting out something for the Android users will allow even more women from all over the world to be able to join. So I think that's fantastic, and I'm really grateful. I'm an iPhone user, and I
Yay.
so I was very I was very happy to join Yoni Circle, and I'm really glad that your level of inclusivity includes women all over the world in this other way. So yay for that. Chloe, I want to thank you so much for joining me. This has been such a delightful conversation, and I can't wait to see where Yoni Circle and Yoni Circle Radio goes. And I have just one last question that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and it's a silly question, but I find that it leads to some interesting answers. And the question is this: if you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Speak from the heart.
That's says it
Actually,
all.
I want to change it. Listen
Okay.
and speak from the heart. Listen and speak from the heart.
Yeah, mine is usually first thing listen.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
it's so true. Absolutely. Chloe, thank you again so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. This was such a wonderful chat, and I'm so excited for you to, continue to be involved in the community.
I'm thrilled about it too. Thanks again. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast. You need to go and you need to join Yoni Circle. You need to find out more about it and more about Chloe Drimal, who is doing such incredible work to include women in both the storytelling and the story listening process. If you're enjoying these episodes, I invite you to rate and review the show and or subscribe. And also, remember, I'm on Patreon, so if you want to support the show and help it keep growing, I would love that too. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg reminding you to listen, learn, laugh, and love a whole lot. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new. And if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.